Hey, everybody, I'm John Myers from Right Better Together. We're interrupting the internet. It's Emily Brooks.
All of it.
All of it, the entire internet. Emily, you don't like when we interrupt the internet, but you're here for it.
But we have to because we're going to be having a webinar.
Yes.
In February.
How to stay motivated.
Yes, which really is kind of what our book is all about. So we have a lot to say about how to stay motivated. And what are the times?
7 Central, 8 Eastern. These are PM. Don't get up too early in the morning.
Oh, no, we are not going to be there.
7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific in California.
If you want to join us, you can sign up on our website by going to our contact page at rightbettertogether.com/contact, filling out the form and putting February webinar in the subject line.
That's what you do.
Yep. And that'll make sure that we send you the link, and we hope to see you there.
I'll be there.
Same.
Welcome, everybody, to Right Better Together. I'm John Myers. Hey, look, everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hello, John Myers.
Hey, what are we talking about today, Emily?
We have quite the guest.
Oh.
We have Lyneta Smith.
Oh.
Who has written a memoir called Curtain Call, and we're going to be talking specifically about writing memoir from healing.
Yes.
And it's a great conversation.
It is.
Before that, we're going to have listener responses.
Oh.
We're going to have a Hey John Myers segment where I teach John Myers something. And then we're going to have a final act where we play a silly game.
Yay. Do I win money?
No.
Oh, man. Okay.
Because I don't have any cash. I mean, I have a bunch of quarters. But they're my Aldi quarters, so you can't have those.
Gee, thanks. How'd you get out of your bubble, Emily?
So I wrote on my blog post recently that I lost my wedding rings.
Yes.
And I'm devastated. I really haven't gotten out of the house much lately. I just haven't had many activities, but I went to church last night and was like, okay, while I'm here, I'm going to do a more thorough search with my sister and my dad. We didn't find it. Spoiler. So don't get excited. But one, it was really sweet for them to help me find it. But what I wrote about on the blog was about disappointment. And we've done an episode on dealing with disappointment. What's interesting to me is that I've realized that there are kind of different kinds of disappointment, because one is like other people or like things outside of your control. And then one is when you mess up. And this is one where I'm like, I messed up. And it's not like I intentionally messed up. Like, I wasn't being a bad person. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just messed up. And it makes me really sad. But it also, I realized when it's other people, my dad and I were talking about this last night because he told me about something that he did that he really, really regretted and feels terrible about. And when he told me that, I was like, oh, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, you shouldn't feel that bad about it. Like, people make mistakes. It's okay. But yeah, when it's you're basically, my point is that we're really hard on ourselves. And there was this great video that I really needed by Mike Donaghy. I mentioned him before. Follow him on Instagram. Because he was like beating himself up over losing his phone at a theme park. It like fell out of his pocket. I think he was able to retrieve it, but he still felt kind of silly for having it fall out of his pocket during a ride, which is super dangerous, by the way. Be careful with your electronics when you're on a ride. But he was like, I was beating myself up over this while I was driving. And then my therapist said, if you had a friend next to you who was talking to you that way, at what point would you go, this is an abusive relationship and I need to end this relationship? This is inappropriate. And I was like, dang, that's what I do to myself. Like, why am I such a bad friend? So I don't know. That really put things into perspective for me. Like, would I talk that way to a friend?
That makes total sense. So how was it your fault? Like, how in your brain, how did you convince yourself that this was your fault?
So that's a good question. I will take off my ring for many reasons, and I've lost it for that reason many times. And I just like never learn my lesson. I just keep taking it off. And when I lost it the most recent time, I was so embarrassed that I had lost it that I didn't tell my husband. And the closest theory I have of what happened to the ring is that it was vacuumed up because he wouldn't have known to even think about looking for it because I didn't tell him because I was embarrassed. So it's not like entirely my fault, but it's also like, man, if I just told him, like, hey, if you're vacuuming, be careful, there might be a ring somewhere, would have, might have saved my ring.
So losing it wasn't your fault, but hiding the thing.
I would say losing it may have been my fault as well because
Why
I
was
because
that's
I
what I
keep
don't
taking it
get.
off at random places
Oh.
and then forget where I've taken it off. But yeah,
So
I would say more so the not telling, not revealing that because I was embarrassed.
so here's a story
Okay.
about a guy that it was his fault, but the actual losing of the ring wasn't his fault. So, once upon a time, this is a true story. There was a sales rep for this place that I worked for, and he would come to town maybe twice a year, and he'd set up displays and stuff like that. And he was cheating on his wife.
Oh my gosh.
And he was setting up these displays, and I will tell you how he confessed that he was cheating on his wife. So he's setting up these displays, and he was breaking down the cardboard and throwing them into the cardboard recycler compactor, right? And his wedding ring flew off and went into the compactor, which you're not supposed to
Oh
climb
my
into because what
gosh.
if it accidentally kicked on and you would get compacted, right? And but so he climbs in and it was full of cardboard and he could not find it and he's panicking because his wife suspected that this is a true story. His wife suspected that he was cheating on her because wives know. So don't people listening don't cheat and because your wife's going to know. And
Well,
he
and for other
knew
reasons too.
he, he knew that when good point.
Thanks.
He knew that when he got home, like that was like one of the things, like you're not allowed to ever take your ring off. Da 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 da. And so he knew when he got home, she would notice that it was missing,
Mm.
and he was just busted. And
Oh
but
gosh.
he didn't take it off like and while he was cheating or anything. He took it off he didn't take it off. It flew off when he was taking
Oh
when he
gosh.
was putting the cardboard in the thing. So he was exposed, but he was doing something wrong and
Yep.
he was exposed, but uh the thing that he was doing that exposed him, what he
Wasn't
didn't
related. Yeah.
wasn't related at all. And then he was like, can I buy the exact, is she gonna notice if I buy the exact same
Oh,
one? And like, and I remember, I mean, this was 20 years ago, but I remember he said it was like $2,500 or whatever. And he's like, then she's going to find the $2,500. And I'm like, dude, why don't you just like stop cheating?
yeah.
Like, you can't
Gee,
hide $2,500 because
you're digging
this,
yourself into a hole, man.
yeah, it was a giant mess.
I one more thing that I'll say is I think I've maybe mentioned this before, so I'll cut it out if I already did, but I lost my ring in a haystack. An actual haystack when I
Did you,
was only still engaged. I was feeding my horses and it fell off my hand because it was too big. We hadn't resized it yet. And we had to get a metal detector, which I think didn't work on gold, and so it didn't even matter. And we found it then, which was crazy. But
a literal needle in a haystack?
well, and I
Um,
thought too, I may have lost it in the yard, like because I didn't know I had lost it in the haystack. I thought I might have, but I could have lost it anywhere in our yard.
where do you live that there's a haystack around?
I lived on a small farm. We had horses and chickens.
Um, so I got out of my bubble. I it's been cold when we're recording this throughout the entire country.
Yep.
Snowbirds telling me I'm not allowed to drive on the roads and there has been no snow where I'm at. It's just been -2 and things like that. We already know Snowbird is my nemesis. And so 3 days in a row, I went and got a hot fudge sundae because that's what I do when Snowbird tells me I can't go get a hot fudge sundae. The first day I got a concrete instead of a hot fudge sundae, which is basically a blended hot fudge sundae. Here's a picture of it now. And then the second day I don't have a picture of this. I got cheese curds. Oh, how is that a hot fudge sundae? And then the third day, I got a pathetic looking hot fudge sundae. Here's a picture of that now. And I don't have a picture of the cheese curds because I ate them on the way home. And it was on National Cheese Day, by the way.
Oh,
That's a true story. And so then, yeah, it was just like, I mean, I guess it was a hot fudge sundae, but it was all like slumped over and like, it was just like it was a hot fudge puddle. So anyway, my
you're
point
making
of
me
all
hungry.
my point of all that was to make you hungry. No, my point of all that was that the concrete and the hot fudge puddle, they still tasted the same. And money wise, they cost the same. So I was out nothing. And
Yeah.
so talk about disappointment. Uh, um I told my brother about it, just like I told you about it, and he was like irate, like not irate, but he was like, I would have gone, I would have done that, like, why, like, and what? It was like, other than and cheese curds, I like cheese curds, so, but I'm not a pushover. Like if I order a whatever a black shirt and I get a white shirt, yeah, I'm gonna
Right.
be like, hey, this isn't a black shirt, but there are things that cause a disappointment that don't even matter.
Great
And
tie-in. I love that. It's so true.
and yeah, that's my point is that now your ring matters,
Yeah.
but I'm
To
agreeing
me.
with yeah, but I'm agreeing with your dad, like I don't think you caused it.
Oh. Well, thanks.
and 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 then like the cheating sales rep guy, he reaped what he sowed.
Yeah.
And he caused it, but he didn't even directly cause it. Like he lost it in the course of doing his job,
Right.
which isn't really related to the person when he was cheating. So there you go. There's all kinds of morals in that, listeners, viewers.
Man, I could keep going, and that's not even what the episode's about.
No, it's about this baby.
Yes. Oh no. All right, so from the book, Why is My Baby Crying? New picture. It's a baby looking very sad and squinty. What does it say?
It says he's crying because I told him he can't eat his dad's phone. So when your baby pops out, do not tell your baby that he cannot eat his dad's phone.
Oh, I see. So the point is for me to prevent my baby from crying.
Or if you can't prevent it, to teach you all of the possible reasons
Yeah.
that he could be crying.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't know when a baby's crying. How do you know? Well, if it was that face, you'll know it's
Yeah.
you told him that he can't eat his dad's phone. So you'll be prepared. All right.
Well, so we have listener responses.
Yay.
Guess what?
What?
We have a response from Janice.
Oh, I've heard of her.
Our favorite calls to action respondee.
Oh, all you other call to action people, Janice is at the top. You don't measure up.
Okay, I shouldn't have favorites. But she wrote a response. So in episode 42, the one about story, which I believe was our webinar, we said to write a 100-word story. And she has been writing every day because I talked to her about this. And I've been reading some of her stuff. Is she's been writing every day and she's been writing children's stories for her granddaughter. So I'm just going to read the 100-word story that she wrote. Amari opened the fridge's French doors. Atop the bottom freezer door, she stepped to the lowest shelf, pushing aside plastic-wrapped chicken with her toes and grasping condiment bottles for side leverage. Shifting to avoid cartoned eggs on the next shelf, she lost her balance and her hold on the ketchup. The sriracha door swung wide, and only grabbing the nested milk jug prevented her falling. She towed her way back, gripped a higher shelf, and kept climbing. She skirted the strawberry yogurt, then draped her torso over the top. Feet braced around leftovers, she pulled the cookie jar toward her. I love the details in that.
So many details.
And Amari had a goal and then achieved the goal. She wanted those cookies. She had obstacles and she got the cookies. Just like in our conversation on story.
Yep. Perfect.
I love those, and I hope you all get to read her other stories as well, because they're very, very good. Good children's stories. So before we talk to Lyneta, let me introduce her. So Lyneta Smith is the author of multiple award-winning Curtain Call, a memoir. She's also published several stories and articles in national and local periodicals and anthologies, including several Chicken Soup for the Soul books, Heart Renovation, a construction guide to godly character. I apologize for the colon. And Clubhouse Jr. Other publications include Credo, Nature's Friend, Vista, Living Light News, and Refresh Bible Study magazine. She earned her BA at Oregon State University. Lyneta and her husband Doug are happy empty nesters living in Middle Tennessee. As a writer and editor, she loves the flexibility to enjoy the grandma life. You can also find her down at the local coffee shop with friends or teaching ladies' Bible study at church. After a long day's work, she often settles down on the couch next to Doug with an embroidery or crochet project while he reads the classics aloud. Their favorites so far are Sherlock Holmes and any character Dickens has created. So here's our conversation with Lyneta.
And we're back. Hey, I'm still John Myers. Hey, look, it's still Emily Brooks.
Hello, and hey, look, everybody. It's Lyneta Smith.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Of course. And John Myers always likes to know, where are you from?
Yeah, where are you?
I am in Columbia, Tennessee. And we've been in Middle Tennessee since 2008.
Where were you from? Where, like, you have no Tennessee accent.
I do not. My accent is probably Wyoming, although the majority of my adult life I lived in the Pacific Northwest. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Emily, why don't you have an accent? You lived in Tennessee your whole life.
I don't have an accent?
No.
Well, that's interesting.
You think you do?
I think it comes out sometimes.
Oh, okay. I've never noticed it. All right, but we're not here to talk about your accent, Emily. Quit trying to make this all about you. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, so Lyneta, you have written a book, a memoir called Curtain Call, and I would really love to hear about what inspired you to write that, what that process was like, especially since you touch on some difficult parts of your past.
I never set out to, I never thought, oh, I really want to write a memoir someday when I grow up. I've wanted to write books for a long time, but it's just weird how that story came out. But around 2014, 2015, I went through a pretty significant crisis, spiritual crisis. And as I sought God for the answers and help, the story just kind of turned into this beautiful redemption story of a life that really was ruined, even though you couldn't see it on the outside. On the outside, everything looked good. I was a churchgoer. I had a beautiful family, nice home, the whole bit. But inside, I felt absolutely ruined. And so when God took that and redeemed that, I was so excited and so grateful that I wanted to share that story. And even though it was very hard to write, because you had to write the hard parts too, I still am glad to glorify God in just what he did for me, and just being grateful for how he rescued me from that. And I've had many people write me privately and say, thank you for writing that, because that's so similar to my story. And I just want to, I want to have that same kind of healing. And so it's been such an encouragement to me to have people, be touched and have that be part of, a little part of their redemption story too.
I love that so much. I already have so many thoughts. One of them is, I feel like we may have mentioned this before. I know I mentioned it in a workshop I've done where if you're writing memoir, it is going to be better for you and often your readers if you are coming from a place of healing. Not that it's impossible to write about tough things that you're still going through, because sometimes that can be healing as well. But when you're coming from a place of healing, you can really see how things ended up being okay. And it's easier to write about the hard things. And it's also, I think, giving you a different perspective on them and allows the reader to experience that redemption with you, as opposed to sitting with you in the, like when you're still in the hard parts. Does that, like, if that makes sense?
That's 100% true. Yeah. Everything you said, right on.
There's actually a great, maybe I should share this, but there's a great article by Louise, is it Gluck? I never know how to pronounce that last name, but she's a poet, and she has a thing on like how writers tend to feel like they can't be happy because then they aren't inspired. And she's like, I write my best when I am healthy and happy and well. Not necessarily happy, happy's a complicated word, but when I'm well, when I am feeling, when I'm in a place of healing, I am able to write actually better about things because I'm coming from that perspective.
Even though memoir is your personal story, you're really writing it for your reader. So if you don't come at the story from a place of healing, then it doesn't really help your reader. They kind of just walk away from the story feeling really yucky. And you've probably read stories like that where you ugh. And I actually talk about in the book, one of the things that started the whole crisis was a short story called Trains by Alice Munro. And she's such a wonderful writer, but the end was just, there was no redemption. It was just a stick in the gut, and you just kind of go, ugh. And I threw the book across the room. And I know you're not supposed to treat books that way, and that's sort of sacrilegious, but my reaction was just impulsive, because it was just, the story resonated with me so much, but there was no redemption. And you just kind of feel like, that, I don't know. It's just a yucky feeling, and it doesn't help your reader a lot to come at it from the dark place. You got to go through the light first.
When the other, you said people, the readers who wrote to you and said, "Hey, I see myself in this story." I know you're not going to have a exact percentage, but some of them were in the middle of their healing, and some of them were post healing, and I related to that. And then I imagine some of them, the things that they picked up on were all different. Like Mary picked up on this, and then Charlie picked up on that, and then Joe picked up on this. Talk about that experience of how it was hearing other people mirror back to you their parts, and how maybe the ones that were surprising or the ones that were minor to you were major to them. How did that feel?
Yeah, I think, well, to the first part, I would say the majority had deep hurts that they had never dealt with before. And so reading the book was sort of opening that door. And so the majority of the people I heard from were just getting started on that journey. But I was kind of surprised. There were some minor things that happened that was the big thing for other people. But most of the time, my big things were their big things as a majority, and they had not even begun to deal with it yet.
Did you get stories like the Holy Spirit led them to that book, like where I wasn't going to buy this book, or that like did you hear stories like that where it was in whatever, I had this one book in my hand and then I wound up getting your book instead? Like, did you get stories like that? Or
I don't remember any stories quite like that, but I do. And not everybody who wrote to me was a Christian, even.
Right.
But there were some people who said they believed somehow that God led them to my story, and some people just read the story because they're my friend, or or it was recommended by somebody else. But I imagine some people sought it out because of the content. So
Yeah.
it's hard to tell.
And sometimes you don't know, like maybe Holy Spirit told someone to give this person this book as a gift or what. Like, sometimes you just don't know how they wind up with it.
Yeah. I believe, though, I heartily believe that every creation that we make for God, that we, as we create with God, every single one of those has an audience that he has in mind, and he gets it into their hands somehow. And so I just, that's whenever I send anything out into the world, that's my prayer, is for my reader.
And whenever we talk about memoir, I just think of all the untold stories where people are like, well, nobody's going to relate to that, or that's just kind of my experience. And it's amazing how many people have gone through the same thing and will actually grow and learn from your story. So if anybody's holding back, I hope that they're encouraged to just write the thing.
I hope so too, because in a way it brought me closer to God, and it was somewhat cathartic, even though I had already been pretty far down the healing process. That's never a one and done. That's sort of an ongoing process anyway. But as I wrote it, I was able to get more healing. And then by the time you rewrite a book so many times to get it to the place where it's publishable, then you then that's when it becomes for the reader. So really, memoir is for you first, especially the first draft or two, and then subsequent drafts then turn into something for the reader.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Mary DeMuth likes to say, an untold story never heals. And I love that, because it's, that's something that I, even now, I don't have any more hard story to tell, really, but, it's kind of a cathartic process, telling any personal story.
Don't ask for another one.
That is not on my list to ask
your
for.
blessings.
No,
yes.
Yes.
They were through this one. What in your so I know that you wrote contributions for Chicken Soup for the Soul. Did they prepare you for this, or were they in the midst of this, or like which came first, the chicken soup or the egg?
I think Chicken Soup came a long time before I started writing the book. I wrote for Chicken Soup, and back in 2005, I think, was the first time I submitted one. So, and magazine articles and things were among the first things that I submitted and got published. So it wasn't right away that I started a book. I was doing short stuff for a long time before that.
I feel like that's often the case, because those short things do kind of, like what John Myers was saying, like prepares you for the longer works in many ways.
It did, especially working with a publisher. Before you've published, you don't know what that's like. And so working with a publisher on the short work will help you to understand the process for a book, which is a lot longer. And then you can, then you can sort of work up into a longer work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point as well. And did you feel like having those credits helped you get published, or did you feel like it was more of what you just said? It was a really good practice.
I think it helped me get published because in order to get published, your short stuff published, you have to hone your writing skills.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not going to get a book published if you have not, worked on your craft. And so, so working on the craft helped, and it also helped boost my confidence. Okay, so I can be published. That's a good first step. Okay, I can be in a magazine or whatever, and then that gave me a little bit of hope that maybe a publisher is going to pick up my book. So, which in traditional publishing is not very easy. Not very many people can get through those gatekeepers. So that's a feat, and you just need a lot of confidence as a writer because it's kind of a brutal world out there with the rejections at times.
Yeah. So one of the things that I want to ask just about, if we go back to the book, is how you decided what things to include and what things to leave out. Like, how did you choose that primary focus for the book as a whole, but also for each chapter?
Yes, because Memoir is not an autobiography. It's
right.
It's not everything. It's one stream, one story. So you think about, in a novel, you have a character that's got a character arc, but in a memoir, you're the main character. You're the protagonist. So I had, and I actually wrote a lot of scenes that I ended up cutting because it didn't really go with it. But as you put the final story together, every scene has to go on this character arc, so that you have one person at the beginning and they've completely changed at the end. And in my case, I chose a word picture of the theater because I was stepping off the stage and out of the costumes and into, like, okay, this is now I can be real. I don't have to pretend like everything is hunky-dory anymore. So that sort of made it easy because I could pull from theater experiences to illustrate things. And so I could juxtapose something that happened on the stage with something that happened in real life. And that's just kind of how the story arc ended up being what it is. But it's not an easy process. Sometimes you have to write a lot of scenes that you cut, and they don't end up in that book. Save them for another book.
Do you remember, like, where you are, what the moment was when I'll call it a framing device, the framing device of the curtain call, the framing device of stepping off the stage, onto the stage. Do you remember when that dawned on you, and how did that feel?
I think that I was at a writers' conference, Oregon Christian Writers. It was called back then. It's now Cascade Writers Conference, I think. And I was in Mary DeMuth's coaching class, and so we were doing sort of exercises. That was also a deeply personally emotional time for me because I was, had just come through this really hard thing. And when it occurred to me, I thought, wow, this is brilliant. This is going to be a really great story. And I think everybody should start their story out like that. I don't think I thought that halfway through, I was thinking, this is really stupid. Is anyone even going to read this? And are they going to, what are they going to think? But you should at least start out with, oh, this is going to be great. So that's what I did.
When you have some clients that you work with, do you help with them with the writing process itself and like helping them find frame devices or picking out what to include, or are you more on the back end?
I have a couple clients right now who are writing memoir, and it's a lot of the very basic. Okay, here are the elements of the story. Here are the plot points you want to hit, and and I think in general, when you're writing a story like that, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, like narrative nonfiction, those themes just kind of arise organically. And so it is part of the process. You sort of bring that to light. It just depends. Everyone has such a unique writing process, and nobody's brain works the same. So it's kind of an organic process, putting all those pieces together. But hopefully at the end, when you get to the point where, okay, now it's ready for the next stage, the developmental edit, then you at least have all the big parts connected and put together in the right order.
Yeah, it just made me think about, I've had a lot of students where I've had them write personal narratives, and it's interesting the pitfalls you can go into with writing a personal narrative of getting way into detail about something and then that didn't actually matter to the story, or not really telling a story but more just, like you said, autobiography, or and so I feel like my job is like, all right, focus on this thing. And there was one student like writing these beautiful scenes like with so much detail, but then it wouldn't go anywhere. And I was like, great, this student is exercising their descriptive skills, but their story skills are still lacking, in that they haven't figured out what they're actually trying to write yet. And I think it's easy to get overwhelmed with memoir because you want to write about all the things, like it's everything that happened in your life and your favorite dog and your favorite vacation and
Yeah,
just
yeah.
everything.
It's sort of like fiction. It's really like fiction in that you've got a protagonist with a goal and an obstacle, and at the end of every scene, they're either going to have reached their goal, or whatever they tried to do made the obstacle even bigger, and then they have to figure out what to do from there. That's whether you're writing a novel or a memoir or anything that is story based. Those are the three elements you have to have, or it's just boring. So
Yeah.
yeah, and that, yeah, you can write beautiful descriptive writing. You can be all Dickinsonian, but in today's world, we like the pace. We like the tension.
That's interesting. Is I also just remembered a book that I read that was a memoir where I felt like he didn't do that. I feel like the book was, how you said the first draft is for you? I felt like I was reading the first draft that was for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it hadn't reached the point where, you kind of read the ending and you're like, what? Was I supposed to get anything out of that? Or I just kind of read your diary,
Yeah.
But when it's you, though, like you were talking about how healing it can be to write these stories, I think framing your story as a story with a protagonist and something about that, at least I've experienced this when I am framing something that way. It's like as I'm getting to the conclusion is how I'm realizing how I grew. Even if it was in the past and at the moment, in the past, I wasn't really even noticing these changes, but it's like as I'm writing it, it's like, and this is the conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like that story is now finished. And it is really healing to go through that process. Did you find yourself, like, as you were writing it, like, oh, I didn't even think about this, and this reveals this to me, and, actually learning through that process?
Almost in every chapter.
Wow.
Yeah. Like some writing about one memory would spark another memory, and then you just have this big realization and go, oh, that's the big picture. And it's yes, yeah, all of that. And the way my brain worked for it, I did not write it in chronological order. I didn't even write the scenes in the order that I thought they would appear. I just wrote, first I wrote the memory, and then you can sort of analyze that and piece it together. But the first draft was all just raw memory, and I just blurted out on the page everything that I could remember. And it was a big mess, but it was something I could work with and sort of think about what you said, where you just, did you realize that's the point where when you're putting it together, then you realize those things, like, oh, this is why this happened, and this resulted from this. And it's kind of like putting a puzzle together.
I think sometimes I'm trying to combine, my brain's trying to combine to what you just said, and then with what Emily said earlier about her students. I think sometimes people when they write super descriptive, they're avoiding embracing the memory. Because if I can describe this bar of soap in great detail, like, I'm not sharing anything of my memory about when I got this bar of soap, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great way for a coach or a teacher to approach it with a student or a client, is if you start with the memory first, it cuts all that. Like, you're not going to spend 2 pages describing that bar of soap, because you're starting with the memory.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you need to I think the best stories are, the description is sort of woven through the memory, rather than, okay, this big long description and then memory or whatever. You weave the description through, and that's what makes a beautiful story.
Yeah.
How do you approach, I'm thinking of this in 2 ways. One, immersing yourself back into a memory that's uncomfortable, and do you set boundaries for yourself or anything like that? And then also immersing your readers in memories that are uncomfortable. Like, I know, who was it? Amy McConnell or Cindy Childress? I can't remember. Somebody said they had to consider, like, okay, now you're going too deep, and you need to use this language, because otherwise your reader might be too immersed, and like you're even thinking about your reader's emotions and things like that. Like, how do you approach those things?
Well, the first part in that, it is, especially if you're writing a really hard story, it is important to take care of yourself, and not, and the physical stressors of where your body is saying, okay, I need a break. Mine happens to be a migraine, so that's kind of an automatic stop right there, because no one wants to write with a migraine. But so take care of yourself, and know the signs of, this is when you need a break. Go write another part of the story for a while, or go for a walk, or put it away for the day, or whatever you got to do to make sure that you are not overtaxing your own emotions. And then the care for the reader is, well, in the first drafts, I wrote everything. I mean, I gave myself permission to put every little detail out there that I could remember. And in subsequent drafts, then I sort of pulled it back in being in caring for my reader, in that, okay, would I say this out loud to somebody? No, probably not. Okay, so my reader is not going to, I
Mhm.
just thinking about it from a reader's perspective. Um, is this going to be overly traumatic for them, or can I trim it back and still get the idea across, and the feelings, and so that they can understand where I was. um, and it's especially important for childhood trauma, because um, if your reader has experienced their own childhood trauma, they're going to have their own feelings on top of the feelings that you're describing. And so um, yes, it's important to take care of yourself and your reader.
That's so interesting. First of all, where the question came from, because you do that in your blog, Emily, right? Like
Mhm.
it's very intentional that you can tell that you're, I don't say protecting the reader, but you're protecting you're mindful of the reader. But the reader, I'll pose this to the guest, are the reader, like the things I would say out loud are totally different than the things that Emily would say out loud. And so that when you got those letters from the different readers, different things touch different people. Like, how do you draw that line, right? And I'm sure Emily's line is much more cautious than my line, right?
Mm.
I'll pull the band-aid off. I'll pick the scab open. And so talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think that everybody who writes has a different target audience. We were each we were each given or come up with whatever message is on our heart we want to share, and that's going to be for different people. So different types of readers are going to want to read John Meyer's story versus Emily Brooks's story versus mine. And so I think you do that by keeping your reader in mind as you write. Thomas Umstattd Jr. likes to call it your Timothy, so
I've
that's
heard him
like,
say that too.
yes. And so just having one person in mind as you write. And would you say this to this person out loud
Mm.
to their face? If you wouldn't, then it might not be. But if you would, then sure, put it in the book or the blog post or whatever. Because um yeah, I wouldn't advocate for watered down or sanitized. I think as real as you can get, but also understanding your reader. And I was thinking that my reader would be much like me, in that that talk of trauma can be very triggering. And so a lot of people said it was really maybe over the top detailed.
Mm.
And okay, yeah, it probably was. But I took a lot out as well. And so I don't know if you can perfectly ride that line. You don't know how your reader's going to respond. Um, but you can try, and just realize that there are types of readers who would very much love to just read a blunt account of something. And so yeah, your reader is going to determine how much you put in, and how you say it.
You don't know this, but I'm taking notes on a different page because you're actually influencing our next book.
Oh,
That's
I
great.
love that.
And
I love that.
so so far you have 3 things. Continue.
That's great. That actually that I hadn't really thought about how I make those decisions, but I know on my blog a lot of people who read it also have anxiety disorders. And so I don't necessarily go into depth about this is what an anxiety disorder, like this is what having a panic attack feels like, because one, they already know, and two, I don't want to bring them there.
Yeah.
Whereas if I was writing to a different audience of here's what it's like to have a panic attack or, trying to share that experience with people, then I might go into more detail about this is exactly like what you're feeling in that moment.
So so that I like that you brought that up, because just this week I think we went in great detail about panic attacks on that episode, that where we talked about them. And just this week, someone, a total stranger, was like, said that was their most impactful episode.
Oh,
and
wow.
and we didn't pull back at all, right? And I just like, help me work through this, blah blah
Mm-hmm.
blah. And yeah, she said that was totally helpful. Just someone that I knew on Facebook, not someone I know in person.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, you never know.
Right.
Because also somebody might need to know, oh, I'm not the only one who's felt that.
Right.
Yeah.
Or when it comes to like what you were talking about, with like child abuse and things like that, that somebody may go, I want to know the details because was it like what I experienced?
Yes. Yes. And
I'm
in
not
essence,
the only one.
Yeah. In essence, is my experience valid? Am I,
Mm-hmm.
are these feelings that I'm having about my experience normal or typical or whatever? So
Mm-hmm.
yes. Yes.
And there can be so much healing. I mean, even just, I'm grateful, for instance, this is kind of different, but even just like having other family members who had had panic attacks, because when I described them, they weren't like, what is going on with you? It was like, I have felt that. Doesn't it feel like this, this, this? And it's like, yes, that's exactly what I'm experiencing. Yeah, you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
you
Yes.
know?
Yeah.
And it's that same kind of sharing that is going on in the writing.
Yeah. And really, I mean, at the end of the day, your book is a conversation with the reader. Even
Mm-hmm.
though they're reading your words, they still have their input. Even if they don't ever write to you and let you know what that is, they still have a
Yeah.
response. So
Yeah. Think of all the people who haven't written. It takes a lot to write an author.
it does. Yes. I try to answer every single person who writes
Yeah.
me, because I know that it takes courage, and that it especially with the hard topics, it takes.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like sometimes I'm the first person they've told this, and they can't tell
Yeah.
anyone else. So it's it's a sacred trust.
Yeah.
How about a call to action for our viewers?
Who well, I love giving advice, so this is happy for me. But I'm just gonna I'm giving this because I need to hear it. I've been trying to incorporate this, and I want to do it more. When we create, remembering that we are made in the image of God, and He is the creator, and we create because we're made like Him. And so very actively praying and letting Him participate in that creation process, and letting the Holy Spirit lead and guide is really something I want to do much more of in 2025. Instead of, okay, I'm doing this big thing for God, and here you go, here's your offering. No, it's we are doing this. We are doing this together, and it's much more of a father-daughter project than here. This is my big contribution.
I love that so much. And I feel like that would shift your mindset too, when you're going into it of, I don't know, just the thought process that you go through, the decisions that you make. So I love that a lot. Our listeners, you can, we want to know if you decide to take on this process or how it goes. So if you want to respond to the comments or in the comments under the episode on social media, wherever you're finding this, or on YouTube, if you're finding it there, or you can go over to writebettertogether.com/podcast and respond on our show notes there, especially if you're listening, this will be there forever. So if you're listening 5 years from now, that's a great place to go. We still want to hear. There's no deadline. So
That was fantastic. This whole conversation was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you
I enjoyed
so
it.
much.
Yeah,
I
thanks for
could keep
having
going.
me.
I could keep talking about this. Like, it's one of my favorite genres. So really, really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Of
Thank
course,
you.
yeah. Thank you for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Wait, we didn't even thank her. Thank you for this wonderful blurb on the back
Yes,
of
thank
our
you
book.
so much for
You're
that.
welcome.
Thank you for being a guest and for blurbing us.
Yes, we appreciate it.
Yes, yeah. I really enjoyed your book, and I'm glad you wrote it. More people need to read it.
Oh,
Thank
you.
And we're back. That was great, man.
Yeah.
So much
She's
there about memoir and trauma.
Hey, John Myers.
Yes.
Just jumping right into it.
Yes.
I am having a hard time naming my baby.
Oh, allow me.
Because so as an Emily, my best friend growing up's her name was Emily, and we also had the same middle name, so we were just called the Emilys. And tonight I'm going to a small group where there are 2 other Emilys. And the thing about names is that we kind of have like a list that we choose from, and then we stick to those names, and then like that just means that most likely they're going to grow up with a bunch of kids with the same name, which isn't a huge deal.
Well, you're having a boy, so I would suggest you don't name him Emily. Is my first piece of advice. You can if you want, but it might be confusing around the house.
And too many Johns. So what would be one way that you could name your baby an entirely unique name?
I have an answer.
Okay. There's going to be many answers, but I'm also specifically bridging you to something very specific.
So you want a unique name that no other baby's ever been named before?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Well, how might someone in a certain culture do that?
Well, my advice, if you want, you pregnant mothers out there, if you want to name a baby that's no one's ever had before, you get like a tray of dishes and silverware. You drop the tray and it goes and the noise that makes, transcribe that noise and name your baby that noise.
Amazing. It's so similar to what I'm going to say.
That's my real answer. And then my second answer is don't just put X's on the birth certificate and let the baby name themselves when they're old enough to.
Awesome.
All right. Which one are you going to do for your baby?
Well, I'm not going to do this, but I'm there. Oh. But I'm going to tell you about a little place.
Okay.
I'm not going to get the name right, but it's called Kong Thong, I think.
Okay.
It is an Indian village.
All right.
And it's very small. I can't remember the exact number of people, but it's only like a couple hundred people, I think. And they also call it the Whistling Village because everybody's name is a song.
Oh.
And it's a unique song. So I'm going to play a video just so that you can hear some examples of this. But basically, when a baby is born, the mom kind of like hums a song or sings a song to it is not words, it's just a vocalization to show their love to the baby, and then that becomes their name. And they may have a nickname or a shortened name that they use, but the song is always unique so that no matter what their nickname or they call them, they all have a very unique name that distinguishes them and that is sung in love. So here is let me share my screen.
These aren't just made-up melodies. The 700 residents of the northeastern Indian village of Kong Thong each have a name in the form of a song. It's known as the Whistling Village of India, and the practice may be unique to the Khasi people here. The names are composed by their families at birth.
The song I will sing now belongs to my daughter Solidarity. We sing it in the fields.
Villagers say the tradition dates back at least 4 centuries. It's meant to express a mother's love for her child. Each name has 2 versions, a short one and a long one.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. I just wanted you to hear some of the examples.
But she said her name was Solidarity, and that song did not sound like Solidarity. And there was a chicken running by. I can't ignore. Yeah. I think that was Misty's. I don't think that was India. I think that was Misty's backyard because there was a chicken running across it.
But I just think that's such a neat thing. And as a fantasy author, I cling to stuff like that because it just learning about different cultures inspires so many world building ideas. And not that I would imitate that exactly, but it just is like, oh, how else might people name differently? Or would they have a completely different naming convention where everybody has a unique name?
It's very important that you choose the right name because you thought that baby was crying because you told him that he couldn't eat his dad's phone, but really he was crying because you gave him a name he did not approve of. A reason to let your baby name himself.
I've known people who changed their names later on.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're like, this doesn't fit. I'm changing my name.
Yep, me too.
And obviously writers have their, they'll make up their own names all the time.
Yeah. That's great. I learned something.
Great. That's the point. If you want to help name my baby, we actually do love hearing from you all. So you know what I want? I want people to submit, Hey John Myers. Like, I want people to submit ideas for that. Or even like, if you want to record yourself on a video teaching us something, like.
I think you're trying to get out of your responsibility of coming
I just
up
am
with
running
new
out of ideas. I really do think that would be great, though. Or game ideas, really. Anyway, but we also, if you want to just, if you would like to subscribe and give us a star rating, that really helps other people find us. So if you are finding any value in this and you want to share that with others, we really appreciate it.
I want to start reading these baby names that they submit for you.
Yeah.
I'll do one. I'll drop a bunch of silverware and do one.
Perfect. I want that. All right. Are you ready for the final act?
Sure.
Okay.
Even though I don't win money.
Your prize for this game, speaking of chickens.
What? I get chicken?
Is this bag with a rooster on it. That was beautifully embroidered by my sister Bethany.
I like that chicken bag.
Yeah, so it's a great, cute little bag. The game.
On a future episode, I'll talk about this parrot bag, but there's no time today.
Okay. This one's also inspired by Richard Osman's House of Games because that's where I'm getting my ideas lately. So I hope that's not copyright.
Right.
Huh?
Okay. It can't be. If it's an internet game, it can't be copywritten.
It's a show. But I also made up my own questions for it. So
okay.
So I'm gonna give you 3 questions, and the first 2. The third one's going to be different, but the first 2, I am going to read the question backwards, and then you have to give me the answer backwards.
Do what?
I'm going to read the question backwards, and then you are going to answer the question backwards.
The words coming out of my mouth will be backwards, or the answer will be the opposite answer of what the actual question is?
Just the words coming out of your mouth.
Okay.
Will be, and the category is film and books. So
okay. And then if it's a Wonderful Life, do I go Life Wonderful It's, or do I say the words backwards? Ethel.
No, it's the first one.
Okay.
Because that would be way too hard.
I can talk backwards.
So there's 3 questions. I'm going to give you 2 chances to say it correctly. And if you get all 3 correct, then you get the rooster bag.
Oh, wow. I want that rooster bag.
So this is an all or nothing game.
Okay.
All right.
Great. So much for me getting the rooster bag.
I thought about actually putting the words across the screen for you, but it's actually going to be more challenging that I'm just going to read it out loud and you're just going to have to...
You don't want me to have the rooster bag.
You're just going to have to listen to it. All right. So the first category is movie.
Okay.
Existence own his prevents almost. And travel time teenager, a does film which in.
Future the two back.
You said it correctly. Yay!
Next.
Right. Second category is book, Revolution French, the during Paris and London. In set is novel Dickens Witch.
See, I have to know the actual name of the book before I write it backwards.
Coming up with questions like this is hard because our cultural inventories are different, right? So, like, I don't want to do a question that is impossible, but I have to just imagine that you might know the answer to this one. Are you Googling it? What are you looking
I'm writing it down and then so I can read it backwards.
That's smart.
See?
Perfect. On Richard Osman's, you would just be playing against other people, so you'd have to be really fast.
Corner poo on house.
What?
Oh, I'm supposed to give the real answer? I thought I was supposed to give funny answers. Front Western the on quiet all. That's my answer.
That's incorrect.
Anyway, right.
That is true.
All right, what was it?
The answer is Cities 2 of Tale
Oh.
I should have said it's the one that begins with it's the best of times, it's the worst of times, only backwards.
I would have said that was the Great Gatsby. I would have said that was Gatsby Great the.
That kind of does sound like something that would be from the Great Gatsby. All right, third category is movie, but we're going to do something different.
Oh my gosh.
You ready? I'm going to read the question in correct order. I'm
doing it so well. We had to make it harder.
This is harder. I'm going to read the question in normal order, but you have to answer it in alphabetical order.
Okay, so it's not backwards, it's alphabetical order.
Yes.
Okay.
What Disney film is set in South America where a royal leader is turned into an animal by an evil woman?
I don't even know what movie that is. Pass. Is that where he's turned into a llama?
I'm not going to answer your questions.
I don't know the name of that movie where he's turned into a llama. So if it's the one where he's turned into a llama, I don't know the name of the movie. Pass.
Have you never seen that movie?
Am I right? Is he turned into a llama?
Yes, you are correct.
Then I've seen it, but I don't know what it's called.
It's a masterpiece. The answer is Emperor's Groove knew the...
Yeah, that's David Spade turned into a llama.
Yeah.
That's how I know it. So wait, hold on. David Spade turned into a llama. All right, so in alphabetical order, that is David into Spade turn into David llama Spade turned. Yay, I win.
I think David would go before into.
Oh. David into llama Spade turned. Oh, that actually that's a better title. I like that. David into llama Spade turned. That's if Yoda wrote that title. That sounds like a real title.
It does, actually.
We need to say, hey, David Spade, we're going to send this to you. I expect to hear about it on your podcast. Because I consider us equal to David Spade and Dana Carvey on the same level.
You didn't win the rooster bag, but that's okay because it's actually my mom's and I need to give it back.
Curses.
But you did win this charging square.
Oh, I got a consolation prize.
Yeah.
All right. Great.
There you go.
Emperor's New Groove. We couldn't have done it without you.
Oh, no, we couldn't have done it without you.